Hi everyone, welcome back to the Proper Property Podcast. I'm Luke and I'm here with Johnny. Last time we kicked off the series with a little bit about who we are, what we do and why we're doing it. This week we're going to be talking a little bit about rent to rent.
Yeah, our favourite subject
So far.
It's
It's a favourite subject so far.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of people are jumping on the rent to rent bandwagon, ourselves included. We definitely jumped on.
But we jumped on it a while ago.
Yeah.
There is a lot of people jumping on it now. I think we should explain to people first, because this is one of the things that I've noticed recently when speaking to people. When I'm using lingo like rent to rent or BRR, you think that they know it.
Of course, yeah.
And they don't know what you're talking about. So I think, do you want to explain what rent to rent is?
Essentially, rent to rent is pretty simple. You rent a property from a landlord, and then you legally sublet that property to other tenants, guests, clients for a higher price. And then the difference is your profit. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And if you've been on a lot of training courses, they'll tell you that it's a lot more lucrative than it really is. I think, the reason that we set this podcast up is to be openly honest about everything.
Yeah.
A lot of these courses scream at you that you're going to make £1,000 profit per month from this one rent to rent, and you can leave your job and you'll never have to work again. And that's just not the case at all.
I mean, I think there are rent to rent deals out there where you are going to make that sort of money, a profit a month, but they're not all like that.
No.
And there's a lot of pros and there's a lot of cons, and unless it's done right and done with the right mindset of this is not a get rich quick scheme, there's a lot of work involved. It's a day to day. People say get a couple of rent to rents and you leave your job. Yeah, but rent to rent is another job. It's a day to day job. Yeah. You've got to manage that. You've got to manage all the ownership tasks of that property. So managing the bills, managing the overheads, managing the maintenance, managing any guests or people that you've got in that property paying you a nightly rate, or however you do it. It's a day to day job.
Yeah, but there are ways, and which is one of the ways that you created with a management business.
Yep.
Is that you can do a rent to rent deal totally hands off, where you do get a management company in place. The only issue with that is that you do need to be stacking the deal to include covering those costs.
Yeah. And
I think what a lot of people do is they think they can do it themselves. Mm-hmm. So they'll find a deal, they'll find a landlord who says, yeah, you can have my property for £1,000 a month, and then they've not stacked in the 15%.
Yeah,
that they've got to pay for a management company. Well, whatever it is, 15% is the average. I think what a management company charge, and they've not stacked that into the deal because they've thought that they can just do it themselves.
Yep.
So when they've started doing it, they've realised how much work you have got to put in.
Yep.
And then they go to a management company afterwards, and that 15% isn't stacked in the deal. So whereas before they were making £500 a month profit, for instance,
running around like a headless chicken,
they're now only going to make £350 a month.
Yeah.
Which it doesn't look as though it stacks as well.
Yeah.
But if they'd have stacked the deal earlier, before they approached the landlord and maybe said to the landlord, these are my overheads, these are what it's going to cost me, at the rent that you're saying, it wouldn't work for me, but I am offering you a guaranteed solution for 3 to 5 years, which is what we do. We are rent to rents. We offer them 3 to 5 years, and that covers the difference. Even if we are getting the rent a little bit cheaper, which, to be honest, with the rent to rents we do, we pay very close to market rent anyway, don't we?
Yeah, if not a little bit less. But we'll touch base on how we've managed to achieve that a little bit later on in the podcast.
So I think it's a good idea for people to make sure that they're fully aware of what it entails going in at the start, and not 3 months down the line when they've not got any booking. Well, they've not reached even market rent in bookings to cover themselves. But
and I think people at that stage start to panic and start to flap.
Yeah.
And what I would say is that there's so many different ways to overcome these challenges, which we've found out at first hand. We've also found out from people that we've spoke to that are doing rent to rents. There are challenges, day-to-day challenges, but there's always ways to mitigate those challenges, whether you pre-mitigate by preempting these challenges and putting things in place, or pivoting the way that you're managing your rent to rent to ensure that these challenges are limited.
I think one of the biggest questions that I get asked all the time is how do you get landlords? How do you get landlords to agree? What's your thoughts on that?
Being real, transparent, and honest, and building that rapport with the landlord before you. There's a lot of people that are potentially going on courses, or potentially going on YouTube and watching certain people. Will not name and shame anybody.
I feel like all we're going to be doing on this podcast is slagging off courses. But if you get the right course and you get the right education, it can absolutely catapult you.
100%.
The problem is it's misinformation.
There's a lot of, I don't want to say there's a lot of people giving misinformation out there and selling crap courses, because I haven't got the stats and the facts to back that up.
Yeah.
But there are some courses that are significantly better value than other courses. So yeah, we're not going to sit here and slag every single course off, because that's not what we're here for.
But I think the issue is firsthand. We've had people come to us afterwards and say, this person, I went on his course, it cost me 12 grand, he told me to do this, and then instantly our brains, because we've done it, we've said, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Or
that doesn't work.
That doesn't work.
Or in principle, yeah, but in theory and in reality, it just doesn't work or stack like that.
And people don't work like that. That's another thing. A lot of people, they take the actual the empathy with people, and it's not about property. Property isn't even about property. It's about people, and it's we SAs. It's getting guests in with HMOs. It's making a simpler way of life, a way for people to be able to afford living a lot of the time, for working professionals and students, and sharing bills and sharing accommodations. It's people. The whole property business is a people business.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people get caught up in the bricks and mortar and the money that they forget it's about people.
Yeah.
It is literally about people. And that's always been our approach with landlords.
Yeah.
We treat them like human beings.
Yeah.
And that's how we've got as far as we've got.
And it's that one, we said it in week 1, and we'll say it again, and we'll probably say it in week 3, 4, 5, 6. It's about those win-win-win situations, isn't it? Yeah. I think there's a lot of people that are doing property or whatever they're doing for the sole purpose of their wins, whereas we actively look and try and work with people where we're all winning. Do you know what I mean? Nobody's losing out. Everybody's gaining something from every deal that we've done so far.
Oh yeah.
Everybody wins, and I really like that ethos that we've grown and built, and will continue to do so.
My favourite one was Ellen and Pete.
Yeah,
that we managed to help them move abroad, help them move to Spain.
Yeah,
because they didn't want to be landlords.
Yep.
But their house was going to sit dormant, and
because they couldn't sell it because of one of the implications of moving to Spain, you couldn't sell the property because
you have to pay the tax on
correct
that. Yeah. But yeah, the fact I love the fact that we managed to start with them and explain to them what it is that we can do, and offer them an amount that every year that is enough for them to live on in Spain.
Yeah.
So now they're living in Spain while we're looking after their house, paying all the bills, covering all the costs,
generating cash flow,
and we're generating money. They're getting an income every month, and they're living in Spain. And I love following them on Facebook and all, and seeing them like in Spain and just living the best life.
Yeah, and one of the long
we did that.
One of the long bookings that we've just had in the property that we've taken off them. was an insurance claim. So that person had their property flooded, so they needed somewhere to live. So we'd helped that person. We're cash flowing revenue and profit, and we've also facilitated them to be able to secure their dream of moving and living to Spain.
Yeah,
which is win.
Yeah,
Love it, and that's a perfect example.
But that's just one example.
Yeah, absolutely. The property at Hillsborough, the property wasn't in a great condition, struggling to get a tenant. So on that one, for example, we went in and said, we'll actually do this property up at our expense. So it was a bigger initial cost for us to take on that rent to rent. However, because we were putting that initial expense and we were refurbing and regenerating that property, we managed to get the rent below market value for a long-term period. So again, the landlord is now, instead of having a vacant property, he's now got a property that's generating cash flow because we're paying him guaranteed rent on a monthly basis. We're generating guests through Airbnb, so we're generating a profit. And ultimately, at the end of that, he's going to get his property back 10 times better than what he gave it to us, because
100 times better.
We've fully refurbished the internal side of the property. We've done the entire garden. We've painted the building.
I know.
It's fabulous, right?
Yeah.
Win, win, win. We're generating cash flow. He's now got a property that's not empty, and when he gets it back, it's going to be in a condition that he can just pop it straight back on a rental market, or even if he wants to sell it, it's in a sellable condition or it's in a rentable condition. Yeah. Just another example of the win-win-wins. And that's going back to how we're getting our clients, and I touched base on that last week. We're getting organic clients because we're showcasing that these are the wins that we're able to achieve. And that's how we're also able to get our properties in a market where the rental market and the rental prices are so high at the minute. And with the cost of living and the running costs of a property going so high, utilities are going up and up and up all the time. It's so important for a rent to work that you keep these running costs down, which is why we've found, I think, finding those landlords that are potentially not in distress, but that need a bit of a lifeline because they're kind of stuck in a situation. We're able to give them that lifeline. In return, we're getting rents a little bit lower than they probably should be. And we're creating those win-win situations.
But when you actually think about it, when you said that we're getting rents lower than it should be, we're actually giving them more in their pocket than they would if they were to rent it out themselves. Yeah. Because when you think about maintenance costs that they've got to cover, we cover that. When you think about if they've got an estate agent that they're paying to rent out their property, and they're taking 12%. So even if you're at your £1,000, you've got 12% coming off that that's actually going to go in your pocket, and then you've got maintenance coming off that that's actually going in your pocket, and then you've got sometimes HMOs especially, you've got bills coming out that's not going in your pocket. All this, you start off at £1,000 a month that you think you're getting in profit for this property.
Very quickly drops, doesn't it?
Very quickly comes down to about £600 a month.
Yeah.
And then you've got your mortgage payments if you've got a mortgage on it. And whereas we'd offer closer to it, but cover everything else.
Yeah.
And for a longer period of time, so there's no voids.
Which is massive, because let's say on a standard AST, you typically sign a 12-month contract. You may extend that over, or people sometimes leave after 12 months. In most cases, from my experience, after that 12 months and that tenant's left, you've also got to pay, if you're doing it through an agent, you've also got to pay them a finder's fee to get the new tenant found. You've probably got maybe a month, if you're lucky, where it's void, so the council tax will go back to you as a landlord. If you're very lucky, you may not have to do any light refurbishment or repainting. 9 times out of 10, you probably will, because tenants don't look after properties as if it's their own.
I mean, we said this recently because we were trying to figure out what to do with a property that we were looking to buy recently, and we were saying if we were to rent it out, this is how much we'd get. This would be the profit. And literally the profit's wiped away.
Yeah. Like, when you mitigate the fact that at the end of any tenancy, you're having to repaint it.
You're having to,
new hob.
Refurbish pretty much.
Probably a new oven, because they don't look after them.
It depends on the tenants that you're getting in. You don't know who you're getting. You only vet people so far.
Yeah.
You don't actually know who you're getting in your property.
Yeah.
yeah, it's a big thing of trust, and I think that's a brilliant thing that that we kind of we didn't create it, but we made this business based on that, didn't we?
Yeah.
When we first started, and I've spoke about it before that that was just the first gear.
Yeah.
For us as a business to make sure that everything works smooth, me and you work well together.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it were a brilliant thing that we did, and it is a brilliant thing. But there are so many people out there doing it wrong. Like, and I say this all the time, especially when I'm going out and shooting rent to rents for other people and SAs. When they've literally just chucked 500 quid's worth of Facebook furniture in it and chucked it on Airbnb for 130 quid a night.
Yeah.
That's doing it wrong. And I guarantee you there's no contracts. Contracts are so important.
Yeah.
Like, and that's something. In fact, while we're on about contracts, I think we should mention the
lease restriction scenario.
Yeah.
The lease restriction saga. Absolutely, we need to talk about that because
I think that's a really good.
But we'll touch base on that. So I think before we go any more forward, is rent to rent still viable in 2025 with the rents being as high as they are, the utility costs being as high as they are?
I think it is still viable.
Yep.
It's not as profitable as it used to be.
I agree.
But it's still needed. I think there are people out there that still need that help and they do need the properties looked after properly.
Yep.
It don't necessarily, and this is the thing as well, when we're saying rent to rent, because all the properties that we've ever done on rent to rent, to make sure that we had a more of a control over them, we've turned them into serviced accommodation.
Yeah, rent to rent service accommodation.
Whereas rent to rent can be HMO, so you can do rent to HMO. Rent to rent as well. It's not just property. Rent to rent can be business. So you can do a rent to rent on a business, where you rent the business off someone, and then you put a team in place, and you make it work, and then you sell the products, or you're selling it on for a profit. You're making the difference. Rent to rent is a lot bigger than what you think. Rent
to rent's been done by massive companies for a long time as well. Most hotels rent the building and then sublet each room to a hotel guest. That's just rent to rent.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
But people, I mean, I've spoke to a lot of people that when I've tried to explain what rent to rent is and how it works, they've said, well, that's just subletting. That's illegal. And like, if you rent a house from a landlord on an assured short hold tenancy, just a standard tenancy, and then you decide to just rent it out to somebody else, that is subletting, and that is illegal.
Yeah.
But when you do a rent to rent, it's a different. It's not an assured short hold tenancy, and it's between a landlord and a business, and that's the difference. And in that agreement between the business and the landlord, it states within that your intentions that you're going to be renting that property over a certain amount of time, and our intentions are to re-rent that out. In our case, as serviced accommodation. In rent to rent HMO, it would be re-rent each room out. And it's important to note that rent to rent is fully legal. There's nothing dodgy going on. It's completely legal, and it's still very much viable, especially for people that are wanting to get into property and don't have that massive pot. They don't have that silver spoon, or they don't have that inheritance, and they still want to get into property.
But it doesn't have to be a start. You can just stick to rent forever. I mean, risk wise, when you think about it from the other side, if the roof falls in, or the boiler breaks, or something really big, like structural. That's nothing to do with us. That's the landlord.
Goes back to the landlord.
Whereas if that was our property and that was to happen, or something really, really expensive, that's our expense.
Yeah.
So when you think about it like that, you don't have to own property to make profit from it.
Well, ultimately, I would confidently say that the rent to rents that we've got, we don't own those properties. The owner does. But we generate more money from those properties, and we don't own them. if that makes sense.
Yeah, but we put a lot more work in.
Yeah.
So this is the other thing as well. I think a lot of people don't understand. You've got to think about time and money. So
Yeah.
if you are a landlord and you have got a big pot of cash and you do decide to buy 3 or 4 houses, but you don't want to be a typical landlord where you've got tenants, you've got to vet tenants, you've got to have an agent in, you've got to do this, that, other. You just literally, your 3 or 4 properties that you've bought, you just want them to make a few £100 a month profit each, so that you've got a little bit of a pension pot at end, because you're making money off the capital at the end when you decide to sell the properties or refinance, whatever it is that you're wanting to do. Whereas what we're doing is, it is a short-term game. We do 3 to 5 year contracts with people, and then we make a significant amount of money per month more than the landlord, but it is literally just for the 3 to 5 years usually, unless they want us to carry on, which we always do rolling contracts. But as a landlord, they might not be making as much money. When we say landlord, property investor, landlord, whoever, it's not necessarily a typical old bloke sat there like just, I'll buy this property and I'll buy that.
It's whoever owns the property.
Sorry if there were a bit of a slight pause there. We had a bit of a technical issue with one of the cameras.
But we're back up and running.
But we're back on. So
they probably wouldn't have noticed.
They probably wouldn't have noticed. With my amazing editing skills.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've got literally just time for one question. So we've had this question come in, and someone asking if you were to get into rent to rent, or you were just starting out in rent to rent, would you recommend apartments in the city centre, or would you recommend houses on an estate?
For me, 100% houses outside of the city centre. A few reasons for this. Typically, from what we've seen in the current, especially if you're doing rent-to-rent service accommodation, what we've seen with the current market is that the bigger properties, the 3-bed and 4-bed houses, are working much better because of the types of clientele that we're getting in there. And when I say that, I mean like the contractors and the professionals that are potentially staying for a much longer period. You're not really seeing those types of guests and clients with the smaller properties, the 1-beds or the 2-beds. I've also seen, especially in the last 12 months, a decline in the 2-beds performance. The ones that we don't have any 2-bed rent. Oh no, we do have a couple of 2-bed rent to beds. But from the Stay Wholesale management, we've got over 30 managed Airbnbs, and a lot of those are 2-beds, and we are seeing that the 2-bed apartments are not performing as well as what they would have done last year or the year before. So my advice on that would be, and sorry, just to go back, the apartments have also got a potential lease restriction issue. This is something that me and Johnny have faced as well with one of the rent events that we nearly took on. So typically an apartment block, when somebody owns an apartment in an apartment block, they just own the leasehold and they don't own the freehold. Now, the difference between a freehold is you own the whole building. The leasehold is you own a section of the building. My phone's just ringing. Bear with me. It's no longer. See, we're always working.
We never stop. I've had to put mine on airplane mode.
So yeah, and with those leasehold, especially in apartments, there's sometimes a covenant and a restriction within the lease agreement which states that you cannot sublet, whether that be to a company as a rent to rent or to do short-term accommodation or short-term rental. So that's really important to look out if anybody is looking at taking on a rent to rent. And it's
particularly an apartment. But leaseholds can be on normal houses as well, so restrictions need to be checked. You can check on Land Registry for like £7. One of the things we had one in particular. We mentioned it briefly on the last episode. We had one where we left the onus to the landlord to check the lease restrictions. Yeah. They didn't check the lease restrictions correctly, and therefore we kind of got kicked out. We weren't allowed to do service accommodation. It was in a restriction. The problem with the leases is that they're about this deep.
Yeah.
So
they can be.
You have really got to read through it. And this one in particular, we were halfway through the renovation, weren't we?
Yeah, we spent about £2,500 on renovation at this stage.
Yeah. So this is one of the key things that I want to tell you. Always have a contract in place, and always make sure that your contract is concrete. Otherwise, we would have lost £2,500.
Yeah.
But in our contract, it is down to the landlord to check the restrictions on the leases.
Yeah.
And if they're the ones who go against the restrictions on the leases, then they have to refund us any monies that we've already paid out. Which she was nice enough.
She was,
fair. She was really nice. She accepted that it were a responsibility, and to be fair, she was really happy with the refurb. We kind of said, right, well, this will be our new job. Then we'll just start refurbing properties for people, and then getting them back. So
yeah, not as much money in it for us. Unfortunately,
there were literally zero in it. We'd literally wasted like 3 weeks of his time, haven't we?
Yeah,
which was frustrating because we could have put that 3 weeks into another property.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. It could have been a lot worse. We could have said goodbye to that £2,500.
Yeah.
But yeah, she was kind enough to send us that £2,500
Absolutely.
back, but only because it was in our contract.
Yeah.
So make sure you do have a solid contract. Again, regarding contracts, if you want to speak to us about anything like that, our contracts, we have built them up over time. We have made sure that the iron tight. So if you do want any advice on anything like that,
100%.
again, we're not solicitors, so obviously legal advice is recommended. You do need to be getting legal advice, but we can tell you about the contracts that we use, that we've had solicitors look over and make sure that they are iron tight.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, going back to the answer to the question, I would go if you were looking at 2 rent-to-rents and one of them's an apartment and one of them's a house, I would definitely steer towards the house. There's potentially less headaches with that one, and you've potentially, if you're doing rent-to-rent SA, you're potentially looking at bigger revenues as well. So that would be my answer to that question.
Yeah, I've had quite a few people ask me in the past about doing houses and the rents being a lot higher and the risk being a lot more. And it is only people who work on their own who are saying this to me, which is why I absolutely push for joint ventures. Yeah, I think if you join with someone who knows what they're doing already, and they've got a little bit of pocket money on one side, they've got a little bit of a pot that they can help you. It's worth it. I understand totally where it's in your brain when you've stacked the deal that this is how much profit you're going to make, and you get really excited because it looks like you're going to be making lots and lots of money. But the realistic thing about it is you're only going to be making that money if you put in all that work in and you can afford it.
And you do it right.
So you look at it and the rent's maybe £1,500 a month for a house, but it's only £900 a month for an apartment. So in your brain you think, well, it looks like as the deal stacks, it looks like I'm going to make a similar amount per month. It's not. It doesn't work like that. The having more bedrooms, it's all about heads on beds. Yeah. And having more bedrooms, so having 3, 4, 5 beds, even though the rents are higher, you're gonna attract more people. Again, when you're stacking these deals, there's no feelings in that stacked deal. Yeah. There's nothing about the area. There's nothing about what's going on. I mean, for instance, we've had properties where there's cyclists. Yep. And there's like 10 cyclists want to come. And when you're stacking a deal, you can't put that into a stack. Yeah. That this property will attract cyclists in groups of 10. Yeah. Where so
things will change, and there are some properties that will attract. For example, if you have a property that's near the Peak District, you are likely going to attract walkers and people staying in the Peak District. But there's a lot of properties that we've got and that we know of that are potentially in a council estate in Sheffield, and people would think nobody's going to stay there. No. Nobody's going to pay £155 a night to stay there. But they will if you market it towards the correct demographic, people that are potentially working on an area. For example, there's a council estate near Meadow Hall. We manage a couple of Airbnbs in that area. They perform really, really well for people that are contractors that are potentially shop fitters in Meadowhall, working at projects at the Forge Masters, and they're actually our better performers, and they're on a council estate near Meadowhall. And it doesn't, when you say it out loud, it doesn't make sense, but when you put all the ring fence around it, it does make sense because... so yeah, the answer to that question, a very long-winded
and I think one of the biggest things we just need to touch on just before we go, because I know we said we've got to go, we're running out of time, is there's two things I think for rent to rent. Number one is close to motorways.
Yep.
Because of professionals and contractors. And number two, parking.
100%.
100%. We've had a lot of issues with parking problems, and apartments in city centre especially. They struggle to work without parking. So, yeah. And, yeah, we're not going to get into parking issues that we've had today.
That's another
story for another episode.
But, yeah, absolutely. Close to transport links in terms of motorways and parking. If it doesn't have parking, for me, my advice, if it doesn't have parking, it won't work.
100%.
That's my advice there.
From our experience, no parking won't work.
Yep. Okay, summarise, rent to rent is not dead. It's still very much viable. Yeah?
Yep.
Do your homework, know your numbers.
Yep.
Know who you're marketing that property to, and do it right.
And speak to the right people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
If you've got any questions on rent to rent, drop us a message on social media. We can have a good chat.
Yep. All good. So, yeah, like and subscribe. And we'll see you next week for episode 3.
What we're doing next week?
And next week we are talking about men's mental health, which is something very close to my heart. For them who don't know, I am the founder of Men in Property, the only men's mental health support group that exists to my knowledge, to be fair.
In the world.
So we're going to be touching on mental health in property, talking about community, talking about people, and I think we'll touch a bit on social media and aspects like that. So yeah,
cool.
That's going to be episode 3. Thank you to everybody who's been following us so far.
Yep. Great support. Really appreciate it.
And we love you all. I'll see you soon.
Ciao.